pleased and honored to have as our first guest at post-Memorial Day the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, James Michael Johnson, the pride of Benton, Louisiana, graduate of the Paul M. Hebert Law Center at LSU, also an undergraduate degree from the Old War School. Captain Shreve, son of a firefighter who was injured and wounded badly on the job, a guy who has ascended to the top spot in the U.S. House of Representatives. He is head of all 435 members. And good morning to you, Speaker Johnson.
Hey, Jim. Great to hear your voice, my friend.
It's nice to talk with you. And 7 months into the job, is it everything you thought it would be?
And so much less. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's been a pretty wild ride. It's been surreal. This is not a job I ever aspired to. Jim, I was content to be a lieutenant in the leadership structure here, but this is how things developed, and we're very honored to have the position. I'm very clear-eyed and focused about where we need to go as a country and how we need to get back to the extraordinary place we were before the last 3.5 years under the Biden administration. And it's a big, tall task. I mean, Newt Gingrich posted an op-ed 2 weeks ago and said, Speaker Johnson has the most challenging speakership since the Civil War 160 years ago. And I called him. I said, is this some kind of interesting way of trying to encourage me, Newt? And we laughed about it. He said, no, did you read the rest of the piece? I said, you're doing an excellent job. It's just the job in the modern Congress is nearly impossible. I said, it's not impossible. We're going to get this job done. We're going through a valley right now, Jim, but it's much brighter on the other side. I can't wait to get to November.
And you mentioned Newt Gingrich. He is a graduate a few times from Tulane, so he has a Louisiana connection as well. But you got the job in an unusual way, and you've already survived a few attempts to vacate the speakership. And coming from a part of your party that I don't have any doubt you're a conservative, but apparently not conservative enough for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz. What's going on with that?
Well, Matt's actually a friend and a supporter. We classmates. Marjorie is kind of on an island by herself, and the problem with Marjorie and a few others is they don't recognize the reality of our situation. The reason Newt Gingrich said that we have the most challenging speakership at the moment is because we have the smallest majority in U.S. history. I literally have a 1-vote margin. And so that means if we want to move a Republican priority, I can't lose a single vote. I mean, just one to spare. And so it's an extraordinary challenge. And then the other part is, of course, if we move a very conservative piece of legislation and one of our top priorities, it's dead on arrival in the Senate, because everybody has to remember the progressive Democrats control the White House and the Senate. Chuck Schumer is in charge in the other chamber. So we only control 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government. And yet you have a few people who expect us to do massive transformational change. And in the midst of that, it's just simply not a possibility. So what we do every day is we try to advance the ball as far as we can up the field for our conservative principles and philosophy, because we genuinely believe, I do, that's what's best for the country, for individuals, families, states, and the nation. And, right now, as I use a football analogy, because I'm apt to do, I'm from Louisiana, this is not the moment for Hail Mary passes. This is 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You move the ball incrementally up the field. You get the next yard, the next first down, put some points on the board, and get to November. And I think we're going to have an extraordinary election cycle.
The election is in the offing, and as we speak, 22 weeks away. And congressional redistricting is such that Louisiana will now have 2 black majority districts. And the person affected most dramatically by this is the incumbent in the 6th district, Garrett Graves. Now, he says he's running for, quote, re-election. I take him at his word, but we don't know whether he's running for the 6th district or running against a fellow Republican. Your thoughts?
Well, I have lots of thoughts on this, as you might imagine. It remains my belief that the congressional maps that were passed after the 2020 census are fully constitutional, and they should be used in November. But, of course, we know the Supreme Court has stepped in now, suspended the Fifth Circuit decision on point, and now we've got to all fight to win in these newly drawn districts. I don't think anybody believes that these new districts are going to survive even one cycle. So we'll have them for 2 years. But under the new map, you've got voters, for example, in Shreveport, the far west corner of the state, my hometown, that are going to be voting for a congressman that will all but likely reside in Baton Rouge, and that just doesn't make sense to people. So, look, as House Speaker, my duty is to do everything in my power to maintain and grow the House Republican majority. And I just want to say on behalf of all my Republican colleagues, you know, there's 6 members in the House, of course, from Louisiana. 5 are Republican, 1's Democrat. Of the 5 Republicans, we have the most powerful congressional delegation in the entire country. I mean, think of it. You've got, just among the 5 of us, you know, you have me as Speaker of the House. You've got Steve Scalise as the majority leader. By the way, Jim, that's the first time in history that those 2 top positions have been elected from the same state ever. You know, we have a key appropriator in Julia Letlow. We have a leader on transportation, infrastructure, and natural resources, Garrett Graves. We've got a leader on armed services, homeland security. That's Clay Higgins. It's an incredible group. We need to keep all of them, and I'm really, really hopeful they'll work hard and win their districts again.
But it may not be that easy to do. Cleo Fields is a seasoned politician, and he will be running in a black majority district in the 6th district. From a strategical perspective, Garrett Graves would probably be better suited running against Julia Letlow, but that would mean a Republican against a Republican. And you as Speaker, that's not something I gather that you would relish.
No, not at all. And I have encouraged Garrett to think hard about running in that newly drawn district, even though it's different. And some of the prognosticators have suggested that it leans for the Democrats. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. I think Garrett is a very strong candidate. I mean, he's delivered real tangible results for the state and for that region. I wouldn't bet against him. And I think that, you know, President Trump won Louisiana by record margins in 2016 and 2020. He'll be at the top of the ticket, of course, in November, and his support is growing. I think this is a coattails election situation across the country, certainly in Louisiana. I think turnout will be very strong because enthusiasm for the Republican side is strong, whereas it is not for Joe Biden and his team. I think it bodes very well. I think Garrett could win it, and I'm really hopeful he'll run in that district.
How do you see the national election?
I'm very bullish on November. I mean, look, I've traveled, you know, the Speaker's job is to cover the whole map. So I've been so far, Jim, my team counted up last weekend, over 110 cities in 29 states, holding events for Republican members and candidates across the country. No matter where I am, the message is exactly the same. America's in decline. Everybody knows it. The current president is asleep at the wheel on every major issue, from the open border that he created to the terrible state of the economy, the rising cost of living, rising crime. I mean, the weakness on the world stage. I think that people have had enough. They're fed up, and I believe that this is going to be a very strong November. I'm convinced, Jim, that we're going to win the White House, win back the Senate for the Republican Party, and we're going to grow the House majority for the Republicans, and I think we'll be in much better shape as a nation after that is done.
Now, the former president, Donald Trump, is leading in the polls, no doubt, and we are 22 weeks away, but he's run 2 elections, and both times he was defeated in the overall vote, although he did beat Hillary Clinton rather soundly in the Electoral College. Now, he is facing a potential conviction. Closing arguments begin today in New York City. You went to the trial a few weeks ago. You stood outside the courthouse and gave your plaudits to the former president. What's your take on the trial itself and how this will impact the election, if at all?
Well, the trial in Manhattan is just like the other that they're pursuing against him around the country. They have completely weaponized the system of justice. And the reason I gave those comments, and I felt like it was important for me to go there, is not as Speaker of the House so much as an individual citizen, as an attorney, a former litigator myself, as an officer of the court. I'm just absolutely disgusted by what they've done to our system, because when the people begin to lose faith in the fairness of our justice system, you lose a critical component of what is necessary to keep a constitutional republic like we have, this grand experiment in self-governance. And so that's what's at stake here. And it's lawfare. I mean, it truly is. You have the prosecutors who are pursuing a political vendetta against the nominee for one of the major parties in the country for president. I mean, it's just unconscionable. So I think that all this will sift down. I think the American people see it for what it is. And this is really an important point to remember. 2024 will be the first time since 1892 that you have 2 actual presidents running against one another in the race. Not since Grover Cleveland defeated Benjamin Harrison have you had 2 persons who actually have 4-year records to run upon. And so everybody knows you don't have to listen to talking points or rhetoric or pay attention to personalities. This is about policy. And the contrast couldn't be more clear. Everybody knows how they were doing under Trump and how they're doing under Biden. And that's why there's a massive demographic shift going on in the country right now with Hispanic voters and African-American voters and Jewish voters coming into the Republican Party for various reasons. They just want a fair shot, and they're not getting it under President Biden.
Do you think it'll be a close election?
It probably will, only because the nation is divided. But you've heard President Trump's latest campaign slogan. He's been repeating the last few weeks on the trail. He says, make it too big to rig. And what he means is, conservatives, Republicans need to come out early, vote early, bank your vote early, don't take anything for granted.
We do have to take an 89.3 second break, and then we'll have Speaker Johnson with us for a few more moments. We're back after this quick timeout on Talk Louisiana. This is Jim Inkster, and you're listening to Talk Louisiana. A few more minutes with Speaker James Michael Johnson, who is the pride of Benton. That's his hometown, but he grew up in Shreveport, the son of a firefighter who gallantly did his job and paid as a result of his duty to his people. And Mike Johnson was affected dramatically by that and has been called to public service himself, and he is the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives. And a few more items before we part company. Mike Johnson, when we left his visit just a few moments ago, was talking about defending Donald Trump in Manhattan, believing that this is prosecutorial misconduct, at least a witch hunt, if you will, echoing a lot of what the former president has said. But why do you think the president did not take the stand?
Well, if I were his lawyer, I would have advised him not to. The only reason you would do that if you had a client in a situation like this is to help clear their name and correct the false evidence or testimony that was put against them, because there's always a risk that it'll, be an inquest, and you don't want your client to be subjected to that, certainly when your client is running for president of the United States. But the problem that the prosecution has here is they put on the weakest case anyone's ever seen. I mean, they haven't even been able to accurately define a crime that he supposedly committed. And for that reason, I think the defense was correct to, do their closing statements and the rest of the case. I think it will come out well. I don't think the jury could objectively look at what's been presented and convict him of anything.
Now, he has two issues here politically, and one is the hush money trial, and this involves payments, and if he's convicted, of course, he could face potential jail, although some believe, I think most, that would never happen, but nonetheless, it would affect his political viability, presumably. But beyond that, as we know, this is also a trial about sex and supposedly a tryst with Stormy Daniels of Baton Rouge, and if you or I were accused of this and we didn't do it, there's no way they would keep me, and I don't think you, off the stand, Speaker Johnson.
Well, if you had good lawyers, they would. You wouldn't subject us to testimony if the prosecution had not presented accurate evidence of a crime. I mean, the whole purpose of this, remember, the reason we call it lawfare is that this is a political exercise. It's not a legal one. They're trying to intentionally detain President Trump, and they've done it successfully now for, 7 weeks? They've kept him mostly off the campaign trail and stuck in a crummy little courthouse in Manhattan. That was by design. They want the spectacle. They want to drag this out every single day in the media and say terrible things about his character and past behavior or whatever claims they can make. Remember, he has denied everything, all the allegations that have been stated. That's the purpose. So playing into that and giving it more oxygen, I think it would be, since it is a political exercise, politically that'd be a terrible idea. And I think the lawyers have given him good counsel here.
Do you think Stormy Daniels is telling the truth about her relationship, if you want to call it that, with the former president?
I don't. I don't know that any witness that's been put on the stand in this case has any credibility. Remember, their primary witness is Michael Cohen, who is obviously a proven liar on the stand. He's perjured himself in front of the courts and Congress and everybody else, the IRS. he admitted on the stand last week that he actually stole from the Trump organization, and they have videos of him saying he hates the man and wants him to go to jail. So, if that's what they're building their case on, good luck with that. I think that the president is trying to get this thing wrapped up so he can get back to the campaign and talk with the American people about the issues that they really, really care about. And that's the economy and crime and our standing on the world stage and the open border and all the rest. And he's right to do that.
A few moments ago when you said you want to make this, and you and the president, the former president, this election too big to rig. Now, former President Trump believes that he not only had his job taken away from him unfairly in 2020, but also that he got more votes than Hillary Clinton in 2016, and there has not been evidence to show either one is true. Why do we have a concern that the American system is flawed to the point where an election could be stolen? Is that really valid, or is that just politics from the former president?
Well, no, look, I tell you, people around the country are deeply concerned about that. I mentioned all the cities I've been in doing campaign events, more than 110 cities now around the country, from east to west, north to south. It doesn't matter where we are. Every public forum, that's either the first, second, or third question every single time is about election security, because people are concerned. They see what's happening. And the latest concern, Jim, is all these illegals. Since Joe Biden opened the border, intentionally, by the way, 64 specific executive actions that we documented that he has taken since he walked into the Oval Office 3.5 years ago. They opened the border. They have, by some estimates, as many as 17 million illegals who have come into the country. Most of them we don't know where they are.
In the last 3 years?
The last 3.5 years, yes. No one knows.
Well, taking you at your word, though, Mr. Speaker, I don't mean to interrupt, but I doubt, even if that number is correct, and it would seem a bit suspicious, but if it is correct, those people can't vote. How would they vote?
Oh, Jim, I'm glad you asked. So federal law, statutory law, says only U.S. citizens can decide U.S. elections, okay? But here's what's happening. In progressive cities, municipalities around the country, they are registering illegals to vote in local elections. They want to do it on the federal level. I think most people understand that was the design. The reason they opened the border and subjected us to all of this catastrophe is because the people in charge want to turn these folks into voters and affect the outcome of the census in 6 years. We have to prevent that from happening. Yes, it's against the law, but here's the reality. When Joe Biden and they process illegals, the ones they do encounter at the border, and they send them throughout the country, they say when you get to wherever you're going, after taxpayers pay you for your bus ticket, plane ticket, train ride to get where you're going, go ahead and go into that local welfare office, benefits office, and sign up for public benefits, taxpayer benefits, for example, by the way. And by the way, when you're there, in every one of these offices around the country, you get a one-page form, and it says, check this box if you're a U.S. citizen and would like to vote. We have no idea of knowing how many people are doing that without proof of citizenship, because under federal law, believe it or not, under current law, the states are prohibited from requesting proof that box is checked correctly. We have a law called the SAVE Act, a statute called the SAVE Act, a bill that we're filing, went through committee last week. It'll be passed through the House very shortly, sent to the Senate. I hope in a bipartisan fashion it will be enacted, because that will prevent illegals from actually being able to participate in November. Jim, let's just say the Department of Homeland Security's bogus number is correct. Let's say there's roughly 11 million illegals instead of 16 or 17.
And that would be over the course of many years, not just the last 3.
No, Jim, that's their number for the last 3.5 years. That's the official DHS number. It's 10 million people encountered at the border and allowed in. And then they have almost 3 million known gotaways that they know that they saw and didn't stop. The scary thing is we have no idea how many people came through undetected, because there are large sectors of the border completely unprotected.
I agree there's an issue, and of course there has been an effort by both parties to resolve this, and there are people, as there were under Trump, getting into the country illegally. But can you name one person who is registered to vote illegally who might cast a ballot in the 2024 election? And I say this because
yes, we can. States are doing audits right now.
Okay, well,
the last couple of weeks.
I don't know of any.
But you got to Google it, because the states are doing audits right now. They realize that they have illegals who have registered to vote. The states that are doing that are purging their rolls right now. But there's no requirement yet under federal law until we pass this new statute to ensure that happens. And Jim, let's say there are 6 million illegals in the country. If 1 out of every 100 decide to participate in the election in November, it would be enough to change an outcome.
Well, that's presuming they would vote for a particular candidate. They might vote for Trump. You just said he's doing well with Hispanic voters. That might not change the election at all. And plus, we're talking about kids. I don't think a kid's going to be able to register to vote illegally. Many of them are children.
That's true, but I said 1 in 100. Okay. If 1 in 100 of the illegals who came over the border register to vote, it's enough to throw an election. That's a serious...
If they all go in one direction, yeah. If they go in one, yeah, if that happens, but you and I think we agree to disagree that this is not going to be the reason why one person or the other wins, but it will be fascinating to follow, and we sure appreciate your time today, and congrats on the amazing job you have. And keep going. You've inspired Louisiana.
Thank you,
sir. Take care. We'll be